All right, everyone, it's just about 4 o'clock. We're going to do a briefing here on the severe weather potential for tomorrow. All of you should have your briefing in your email inbox so far. Just sent that out about 10 minutes ago. Mr. Rohan Jain is joining me. He's going to cover the aspects of coastal flooding, also wind speeds across our area. We're thinking regardless of what happens tomorrow, it is certainly going to be a windy day and dangerous conditions on the marine, on the coastal waters and things of that nature. So Rohan's going to cover that part. I'll cover the severe part first. We do have an enhanced threat for severe weather tomorrow. That means numerous severe storms are possible. Enhanced threat, that's a level 3 out of 5. We don't get that every year. That's every couple years usually. It's obviously not as high as a moderate threat, but that's something that certainly grabs your attention. The main threat has been all along very, very strong winds. Rohan's going to talk about how it's going to be windy regardless, and it doesn't take a lot to bring even stronger winds down to the surface. So that's still our overall main concern. But there's one thing one of our lead forecasters noticed this afternoon, an increased threat for tornado potential. We'll show you that on the timing. With the wind speeds, the wind advisory has been expanded to be impacted across all of eastern North Carolina. So again, it's going to be a windy day tomorrow, no matter what happens. And we did upgrade to storm warnings for the coastal waters, Oregon Inlet down to Surf City. As far as the timing goes, this has not changed. This is very similar to what we've been saying over the last 24 hours. Across the western part of the area, we expect a line of thunderstorms to move in. Could have some scattered showers in the morning, but this timing is specifically for the severe weather threat. So roughly 11 to 4 across the far west, places like Greenville, Kinston, down through Kenansville. In the middle, 1 to 6, so late afternoon into the early evening. And then getting off the coast sometime after 3 and perhaps lingering as late as 7 o'clock or even 8, places like Rodanthe and Hatteras Island. So this is a rough estimate of timing. We're going to be a little more specific here in a second. Our main concern, damaging winds, 60 miles per hour or greater. It's going to be windy tomorrow. And again, any of these showers or thunderstorms, the air above us is even stronger, the winds, and they could be transported down to the surface. So scattered power outages, scattered tree damage, that's probably the most likely scenario. If we get enough heating, if this line of storms breaks up into some smaller organized supercells, we could have a couple of tornadoes, and they could be on the strong side. So that's kind of our reasonable worst case scenario. In that circumstance, we could have a few strong tornadoes and wind speeds of 70 to 80 miles per hour. That would be the worst case that we expect. Then on the marine waters, we do expect the potential for water spouts and, again, storm conditions for some of those coastal waters. I'm going to hop out of the briefing, and we're going to show you timing. This is one computer model that's pretty close to what we have in terms of our actual forecast. It matches it the best. So I'm going to zoom in here a little bit, make it a little bit easier to see at home. So you should be able to see it pretty well. This is 9 o'clock in the morning. Could have some scattered showers first thing in the morning. So don't be shocked if we have some of these scattered showers 9, 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock in the morning. It is going to be windy even before the thunderstorms get here. So these scattered showers will have the potential to produce 40 or 50 mile per hour winds first thing in the morning through mid to late morning. So please keep that in mind. But what we'll be watching is this line of storms roughly west of the Raleigh area by late morning. This is going to slowly advance toward our area and kind of be in the western part of our area after noon or 1 o'clock. So places like western Duplin County, maybe western Greene, western Pitt County, that line starts to move into the area. And the thing we'll carefully watch between 2 and 3, you'll notice the line becomes a little more scattered, but it actually intensifies. You can see these darker red shadings. I'll go back an hour or two. Again, a solid line, and it scatters out a little bit, but it actually intensifies. If this comes through as a solid line of storms, we're going to have wind gusts in excess of 60 miles per hour and some damaging winds. If it breaks up a little bit and we get enough surface heating, these little funny shapes could be the potential for some supercell thunderstorms. If that were to happen, our tornado potential goes up. So that's why we put the wording of a few strong tornadoes are possible. And really that could be anywhere. This is 3 o'clock the afternoon tomorrow afternoon. As we advance the slide to 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock, again, this line is not weakening. If anything, potentially intensifying as it heads toward the coast. The reason for that, 3, 4, 5 o'clock, typically that's the warmest part of the day, the most fuel for the storms. And that's why we think some of these storms could actually intensify as they head toward the coast. We mentioned lingering on the coast, and then finally moving off somewhere in that 6 to 8 p.m. time frame. So that's kind of an animation of timing. I highly recommend, we said this during the winter storms as well, weather.gov. You can go down to the hourly weather graph or weather.gov/forecast points. We plan to record this part of the webinar and send it out. In that email, I'll try to put those links in there. But again, very similar to the timing that we just showed you. Now I'm going to turn it over to Rohan. We mentioned, a lot about severe weather, but no matter what happens with that, it is going to be windy, windy, windy tomorrow. And he's going to talk about that and also how that could impact some coastal areas with some flooding.
Yeah, thanks, Eric. So as Eric had mentioned earlier, ahead of the line of showers and thunderstorms, we're going to have some pretty strong winds. Those are predominantly going to be coming from the south, and they could gust up to 50 miles an hour across much of eastern North Carolina. As you get closer to the coast, those wind gusts do strengthen a bit more, 50 to 55 miles an hour. And once you get towards our coastal waters and the Gulf Stream, around 60 miles an hour gusts. The peak of this is going to be Wednesday afternoon, just as that front is moving through ahead of it, but they will strengthen through the morning. Now, these winds could result in tree damage, power outages, hazardous travels on bridges for higher profile vehicles. So all that is stuff to keep in mind, even ahead of the line of showers and thunderstorms. So the winds will weaken a bit behind the line of thunderstorms. They will shift to become more out of the west, and they will weaken a bit. But they'll still be about gusts of 30, 35 miles an hour behind it. So while it will lessen, it'll still be breezy out there behind the line of showers and thunderstorms as well. Now, what this means is we'll also have some high waves associated with this surge of wind. So as you can see, a lot of our coastal water is 15 to 20 feet highest along the Gulf Stream. As you get closer to the coast, it does go down a bit, 10 to 12 feet off the Northern Outer Banks, 12 to 15 off the coastal coast. Now, a point of concern for us is Ocracoke. Because of the vulnerable dune structures in Ocracoke, we could see some overwash Wednesday afternoon into evening in those areas as well. So we do have a coastal flood advisory out for Ocracoke to cover that. Now, speaking of coastal flooding, as I'd mentioned, the ocean overwash concerns for Ocracoke led us to do a coastal flood advisory. But in addition to that, we have Soundside coastal flood advisory in effect for a lot of the northern Pamlico Sound and the Pamlico River. With this sustained southerly flow for multiple hours and pretty strong as well, we could see some water start piling up across the northern Pamlico Sound. And right now, the expectation is about 1 to 2 feet above ground level. So nothing major by any means, more so minor Soundside coastal flooding. But this is going to be late morning Wednesday into Wednesday evening. So that's just another thing that we're kind of keeping an eye on here on our end. And with that, I'll pass it back to Eric for anything else he has to say.
And one more thing, since we still have this graphic up, Rohan, you mentioned really well across the Pamlico Sound, it's that south-southeast wind that's pushing that water northward. Also up places like the Pungo River and Belhaven, that's another vulnerable spot that we could see some of that flooding. So again, any of these yellow shaded areas, Rohan mentioned the Pamlico Sound, but up the inland rivers, including the Pungo and Pamlico as well, could see some minor water level rises.